Hi, everyone. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. In this episode, we are digging into that heinous double murder in Columbus, Ohio. And honestly, fair warning, there is a lot of information that I'm about to unload on you. So, take a note or get a drink, one of the two. But this mystery is deepening by the minute. Every single day, there's a lack of information from the police, but then something that the true crime community finds out that suddenly makes it even weirder, right? It's been 9 days, right? I'm recording this on January the 8th. And wouldn't you know it, another 911 call. Not from this house. We've already talked about 911 calls, both from inside this house and from outside the house. People, trying desperately to figure out where the Tepe family was the morning they were found murdered. But this call is from down the street, and it's 11 days before the murders. And it's crazy. Someone is smashing and banging on the front door of this poor victim's house, and they're calling 911, and guess what? It's right in the middle of the night at the same time that the Tepes were murdered. So I'm going to get into that. But also, there's something that's been weighing on me a lot, and that is these little kids that were left behind with their parents murdered in the house. So one of them is a 1-year-old. That child is not going to provide a lot of clues, right? Probably inarticulate at this point, can't speak. But the 4-year-old could really help. I know you probably think I'm crazy, but there is forensics that apply to little people. It is a unique art. It is extremely specialized. And forensic interviews of children in crimes has yielded convictions in the past. You're going to see something tonight. Get your Kleenex. It will make you cry. I covered the case, 15, 20 years ago. It was so sad. This little boy, 6 years old when his sister was killed, 7 years old when he testified against his own mother in court and just broke into tears. Anyway, forensically interviewing little kids about what they've seen and what information they can provide and how reliable they are, and do they know the truth from a lie, and are they suggestible? All of those things are critical here. And when it comes to the Tepe's 4-year-old child, I am fascinated by what might be happening with that child right now. First of all, the child, according to their uncle, the kid's uncle who interviewed with me, is in the care of family members. Even the uncle looked after the kids for a little bit. And they are technically the guardians right now, right? So they control the access to the children. The guardians control the access to the children. And if they don't want the police interviewing the children, the police don't get to interview the children. But if they're okay, and I say children, I mean the 4-year-old, but if they're okay with it, well, that's when the specialty kicks in, because not your average detective can do this kind of work. They have screwed that up in the past. And, for many, many years, we didn't understand the significance of child forensics when it comes to the psychology of how to interview a kid, because kids want to please. They'll say anything. They want to please you. They also are extremely suggestible. So if you ask a leading question, they'll go with it, true or not. So it is an art, and I'm going to take you through that today with somebody who worked with J.C. Dugard. If you're in the true crime community, you know J.C. Dugard. She was snatched from on the way to the bus stop when she was about 11 and spent 19 years in captivity. A rapist impregnated her twice. She, had children by this guy. And this is the psychologist who worked with J.C. and her family and her kids. And so you're going to hear from her all about the specifics of how to interview and extract information from tiny little people. Again, it's a real art. So in addition to that, I'm going to tour you around that neighborhood a little bit, because you got to kind of know the lay of the land. Much like in Idaho, we toured that neighborhood to sort of get a feel for what the killer might have done. And it mattered, because Kohberger was a stalker. Not only was he probably stalking out in the woods behind the house and peering into the windows of Maddie and Kaylee, he was also stalking with the car, right? Driving around the house. So I'm going to give you a feel for this house on North 4th Street in Columbus, Ohio. Not just 8th Ave and 4th, which is the corner. They're just one house off the corner, but also the back alley. I'm going to drive you down the back alley so that you can see where this killer might have accessed their house. And then I'm going to give you the camera tour because, as it turns out, there are freaking cameras everywhere. The neighbor has like the measles of cameras on their house. There's cameras everywhere, every single side of the house. So I'm going to show you all the cameras that, if they're working, could have captured this killer. And maybe the police have it already and they're just not showing us. I don't know. But I'm going to do that. And also, there's something that's been bothering me, and I wonder if it bothers you. One of the 911 calls, there's a witness who said, oh my God, I see a body. It's Spencer, and he's fallen off his bed, and it's all bloody. He's in blood. But the police said that the bodies were on the second floor. And if you look at the house, how do you see in the second floor windows? How did this person, this 911 caller, see the bodies? I'm going to tour you around the house, which windows are on the basement bedroom. And I'm also going to show you where I think this guy may have gotten up and made the 911 call and been able to peer in a window, but I don't think it's plausible. I think it's also possible the police might have made a mistake in saying the bodies were on the second floor. Either that, or the 911 caller might have been inside or got inside. But he also says I can't get any further or get a better look. So that, anyway, I'll get into all of that. There's so much to unpack here. I'll break it all down for you piece by piece, but let's start from the beginning. A double murder on a street in Columbus, Ohio, and it's pulled a very quiet block into a national spotlight. It's North 4th Street. You probably know by now. And until last week, North 4th was where Spencer and Monique Tepe lived, right? They were at number 1411, and they lived with their two little kids. As you probably know by now, Spencer and Mo were shot to death in the early morning hours of December 30th. Those little kids and the family dog, a golden doodle, left unharmed. Golden doodle, remember that, because guess what else featured a golden doodle? Yep, 1122 King Road and the Idaho murders. Get to that in a minute. So this Columbus, Ohio killing has all the hallmarks of a classic whodunit. No signs of forced entry, but also no weapon to be found, right? Which, of course, rules out either parent killing the other because they would die and the weapon would be there. But if you watched or listened to the last episode that I did on this case, you heard about a disturbing call that came into 911 dispatchers in Columbus, Ohio. And the 911 call pinged at 1411 North 4th Street. And 8 months later, that address would become the scene of a terrifying double murder. So this is the 911 call from 8 months before the murder. The caller is identified as a woman only, but nothing more. She's crying. You can hear it, plain as day. Sounds a little drunk. And she quickly had second thoughts about bringing the police to 1411 North 4th Street. So she hung up. And as protocol dictates, the dispatchers called back. They always do, and this was their conversation.
Hi, this is 911. We just got a hang-up call. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're crying. Do you need police, paramedics, or anything?
No, I'm okay. I promise. I'm just emotional. I'm okay. I don't need nothing.
Well, can I ask what had you call 911 in the first place? Like, were you having an argument with somebody?
Me and my man got into it, but I'm okay, I promise.
Did anything ever get physical?
No.
You guys were just arguing, nobody hit each other?
Yes.
Okay. All right, man. Well, I have the information here. I can go ahead and tell the officers to cancel hitting over to your address there at 1411 North 4th Street.
Yes.
If anything changes, call us back.
Okay.
All right,
I'm sorry.
While we still do not know who that woman was officially, there is at least one person who says he knows who she wasn't. Monique Tepe, Spencer's wife. A relative of the Tepes says that was not Monique on the phone. That's not her voice. It's not the way she talks. I got into it with my man. That stood out. And he said it's just 100% not her. I think he said 1,000% not her. But if it was not Mo in the middle of the night inside that home, who was it? What's interesting is that the relative, the kid's uncle, said they were having a party that night, so it must have been a party goer. But now he's walked that back. And he says, oh, I checked my daytimer and I got the dates wrong and they weren't having a party that night. So even more mystery. But now I want you to hear the cascade of 911 calls that happened on the morning of December 30th. That's, of course, when the bodies were found. When Dr. Tepe didn't show up for work at his dental practice that morning, his boss and his friends couldn't call 911 fast enough. And unlike the mystery caller from back in April, they damn sure wanted the police to act fast and get to that house right away for a welfare check. So first, Spencer's boss called the police from Florida, where he was on vacation. You know, the coworkers got a hold of their boss and said, hey, Spencer's not here. So the Florida boss calls police and said that Spencer had been running the dental office for him, and he had such a stellar track record that the boss knew something was wrong when Spencer was just a couple of minutes late for work, according to the workers. So here's the boss's call to 911.
I would like to ask for a wellness check on an individual at their home. Well, I'm currently in the state of Florida. I'm on vacation, but this individual, Spencer, works with me, and he did not show up to work this morning, and we cannot get a hold of him or his family.
He didn't show up to work?
Correct.
Okay. Does he have medical problems or?
No, and he's been reliable, and we cannot get in touch with him, his wife, his family, anybody that lives in that house.
Okay. So
There's
you're
two
in
kids in the home. I'm in Florida. I own the business. I was informed by my employees that he was not at work, and he runs the office. Have you guys received anything else, like calls about him or like a car accident or anything like that?
No, sometimes people just don't show up to work. I mean, maybe he's sick, I don't know.
Within minutes of the boss's call, a second call comes in to 911 in Columbus. And this time it's another concerned friend who has now started the drive and headed out to the Tepe's home himself. By the time he gets there, police say they'd already been there, right? Cops said they'd rung the bell at the Tepe's home. They peeked in a window at the Tepe's home, and for reasons unknown, they just left. But now I know the reasons. Because they weren't at the Tepe home. Yeah. So now, you know, another piece of the puzzle. The cops were called out to do the welfare check at the Tepe home, and they went to someone else's home. And whoever it was didn't answer the door, and there was nothing when they peeked in the window, so they left. So no one had looked at this home. No one had peeked in a window at this home. And this guy, this friend, this bewildered friend is on the line with 911 when he gets to the Tepe's home. Here's his call.
Okay, 1411.
1411, yep.
Okay, what's the emergency there, police or medical?
Maybe both, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of doing the wellness.
We had a call out there. They knocked on the front door and back door multiple times, and there was no answer.
Yeah, no answer. I can hear kids inside, and I swear I think I heard one yell, but we can't get in. At this point, I don't know if I need to break the door in or just get in the house or what. So.
Okay, were you out there when the police was out there?
I wasn't. I just got here about 5 minutes ago.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll send them back out to you.
So, yeah, the guy could hear the kids, he said, and said that one of the kids is yelling. But still, at this point, nobody knew that Spencer and Mo were upstairs. On the second floor, the police say, near their bed, both of them dead from gunshot wounds. But it wouldn't be long before the horrifying reality of what happened inside that home would be discovered. And that brings me to our final 911 call that morning from a friend who saw the carnage, actually saw it, and actually heard the kids crying. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is super sad. But if you listen closely to this 911 call I'm about to play, you can also hear the kids crying in the background. They're crying loud. They're screaming. I think this person who's calling 911 is outside the home looking in, because the sounds of the kids crying certainly don't sound like he's in the home. It sounds like that might be coming through a window. And also, he's trying to describe what he's seeing, but he's telling the dispatcher, I can't get any closer, which made me think that he's outside looking in and maybe looking in a window. You listen to his call. We'll talk about it in a moment.
1411 North 4th.
Okay, 1411 North 4th. We've got several calls on that. What's changed since the last person I talked to?
There's a body.
There's a body inside?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me get you on the line with the medic, okay? Stay on the line.
Oh my God.
Columbus Division of Fire, what is the address of your emergency?
1411 North 4th.
Okay, 1411?
Yeah.
All right, the house apartment?
House.
All right, I mean, what's going on there?
There's a body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just did a wellness check. We just came here, and he appears dead.
Okay.
There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood. I can't get closer to see more than that.
Okay, so you can tell he's obviously not breathing or anything?
Yeah.
So here's where I'm totally confused. If this guy is on the phone with dispatch saying, I can see Spencer, he's a part off of his bed, he's off of his bed, and he's, bloody, and there's blood everywhere, and he looks like he's, lying in blood. How is he seeing through a second floor window? Because I've looked all around that house. In the back, no effing way. You're not scaling to the second floor of the back because it is a flat back, facade that has no sort of finger holes or anything. You could not scale up the back of the house and peer in the back windows. The side windows of the house, okay, maybe he's at a neighbor's house and they've let him in and he can look through the windows. But I don't think so, because I think he would have told 911 that. I'm at a neighbor's house looking across into their windows and this is what I see. But he doesn't say that. So that leaves the front of the house. And if you look at the front of the house, you have to zoom in to see this, but that railing, that kind of like flanks the second floor, that is not like a patio. That's not a deck. That's just a decorative railing that's only like just about a foot from the facade of the house. It's just a, Romeo and Juliet kind of thing. You can't really stand on that. You stand on that deck. It's just a railing. So you could get up onto that railing, and then if you got your feet onto the railing and you pulled yourself up to the second floor, you maybe could peer through that second floor window in the front. I don't know if that's the master bedroom where Spencer and Mo slept, that window there. I don't know. I don't know if it's a vaulted ceiling in the front of that house. Like maybe the living room is in the front with a vaulted ceiling and a big, window up on the second floor. But if that's what this caller did and scaled up to see through the second floor, how is he on his phone? Right? Like you'd have to use your both hands to hold on for dear life. So this is why I'm so completely confused as to how that caller could see through a window, if that's how he saw Spencer and Mo, on the second floor. Okay. Hopefully we'll get that solved at some point. But there is another piece of the puzzle. On December 19th, that's 11 days before the murders, a neighbor of the Tepes also called 911. And guess what time that neighbor called 911? 2:31 a.m. Yeah, that's a familiar time, isn't it? Because it's right in the window of when Spencer and Mo might have been killed. That neighbor, she said somebody was smashing and banging on her door and would not leave. I want you to hear her as she talks to 911.
What's the emergency?
Somebody's knocking on my door. I think they're trying to get in. They're banging on my door.
Okay, someone's banging and knocking. Do you know who this is?
No.
Do you have a description of them?
No, I can't see any face upstairs.
Have you asked them what they want or if they need something?
No.
So according to the dispatch logs, the quote-unquote problem left at 2:44 a.m. which, if you do the math, means that that poor neighbor of the Tepes was dealing with 13 minutes of like a terrifying situation. Her address is said to be just like 3 minutes walk up the street on North 4th. And to be clear, nobody in authority has linked this episode, this weird thing, to these murders 11 days later. At least they haven't done so publicly. In fact, when it comes to like being public about this case, the authorities haven't said much of anything for 9 days. And again, I'm recording this on January 8th. So one thing they have done is they've released this, snippet of grainy surveillance video showing what they say is a person of interest in the alley behind the victim's house. But they're not saying that the person is a suspect. At least they're not saying they have a suspect. They're not saying that guy's a suspect. They're just saying person of interest. And they're not saying they got that guy. They still say they don't have a suspect. This feels so much like Idaho. I remember in those weeks after the murders on November 13th, I remember these questions, these exact questions, this exact probing of the police. How can you not have anybody? This was unbelievable, right? 4 kids in their beds stabbed by a madman? He's had to have left some kind of evidence, right? Oh, and originally they said in Idaho, there's nothing to fear. This was a targeted attack. There's no danger to the community. Jesus fucking Christ, are you joking me? Brian Kohlberger was out at the goddamn stores getting snacks. There was plenty to worry about, right? Plenty. That psycho killer, quadruple murderer, was wandering among us for a month and a half. So anyway, this feels a little the same, just that we're at day 9 right now and not a word from the police, nothing more than just this grainy video. I wonder if they're going to ask us about a white Elantra or some car next, but they're certainly not asking for help. Like the police aren't enlisting this crowdsourcing group of us who may have seen or witnessed something and might be able to add to the puzzle. Maybe they have a reason. I always want to defer, but I do think it's weird. There were no signs of forced entry in this house. There was no murder weapon, right? But they did find some 9mm shell casings. That's important. Cops can get a lot out of that. So that's why earlier on my News Nation show, I called up retired FBI agent Jennifer Koffendorfer to ask a few of these super important questions. And here's our conversation. You've got some news that you have discovered just by means of Google. What do you have?
Well, I tell you what, this was something that I used a lot in the Brian Kohlberger Idaho 4 case. And basically, it's looking at trending on Google. In other words, who's being Googled, when are they being Googled in connection with a particular homicide. So, for instance, on the Brian Kohlberger, somebody was Googling Brian Kohlberger before anybody ever knew that name. And I believe that was Brian Kohlberger Googling himself right after those murders up until he was arrested. In this particular situation, I noticed that somebody is Googling or Googled 1411 North 4th that you just spoke about many, many times. In fact, the peak amount of times, even compared to after the murders, before the murders on December 5th. And I found that very interesting. Why?
Yeah, to say the very least, before the murders, a lot of Google. I can only wonder, Jen, if it might have been the parties, because they were said to hold a lot of parties. I will say this, the brother-in-law who spoke with us on this program, who said that's not my sister-in-law's voice on the 911 call, he did walk back the fact that there was no party that night. He'd said there was a party that night. He's now checked his calendar and he said it was wrong. But they had parties all the time. Is it possible it could have been all the party goers Googling to find it, or are they using the address to Google?
Well, I thought it might have been. But then when I looked back at a party we know about, which is that party back in April with the phone call you spoke about, you don't see that trending. So in other words, it's not the number that you see, it's the percentage that you see. And this is the highest percentage even after the murders. So somebody was really looking at all the information related to that address. In addition, if you look on November 30th, Dr. Tepe, he was actually Googled a huge percentage as well. All I'm saying is that law enforcement, and I'm sure they're already doing that, is looking at who actually committed those Google searches. Because if somebody assisted in this crime that was more of a professional, Ashleigh, they would want to know everything they could about Dr. Tepe and that address well in advance.
Yeah, it makes sense. What do you make of this 911 call that we're now hearing down the street? Same time frame, middle of the night, somebody banging and crashing around at their door and terrifying them for 15 minutes.
Right. Two things. First of all, this area that they're in is not a good area, Ashleigh. It's surrounded by some of the worst gangs and drugs and crime problem in that city. And they're, of course, trying to revitalize it and get it to be a really nice, yuppie neighborhood. So because the modus operandi, if you will, seems to be different, although that time frame is significant, you can bet law enforcement is going to look at that. I don't think it's going to be related.
I am wondering, based on what you just said, if it's possible that this was a case of mistaken identity. Some drug gang going to take out vengeance on someone they thought they knew and they got the wrong house. Is that a possibility, given how unique this house is and given, you know, how upscale it is?
I don't think with the Tepes, and let me say why. Working gangs for all of those years, this is just not how gangs operate. They come in force, they come in more than one. If it's an initiation or something like that, they are going to spray and pray with those bullets they're going to fire, and they're going to leave that house a complete mess. You would have heard that dog barking. You see how close those houses are together. Why wasn't Larry barking up a storm with this? Again, I think it's going to be somebody familiar.
That's a good point. Dogs don't bark necessarily at people who are familiar, and we don't have reports of neighbors saying the dog was barking. We did have that in the Brian Kohberger case at 1122 King Road. That's coming up a little bit in the show. We're going to talk about that. But I want to ask you about the 9mm shell casings that were found. What are the police doing with those? Because those can be a wealth of information.
They really can be. There were 3 found. So, you know, right away we know there were 3 bullets. We also know that there was 1 that was in Monique and 2 in Dr. Tepe, right? Because by process of elimination, he was shot, police said, more than once. So that is a wealth of information. I find it very interesting that the casings were left behind, Ashleigh. That tells me something in and of itself. Maybe this person was very good with guns, but not really a professional.
Yeah, that's what I always think. If they're sloppy, they're either idiots or they had to make a quick getaway. Does this scream stranger or someone they knew?
It really screams at this point somebody known to them, somebody who particularly targeted them. And let me say why I say that. First of all, lack of forced entry. The second thing is that code, that's used to get in. Imagine all the people that might have known that code with their wedding being held there, all these parties being held there. Again, we talked about Larry not barking. We talked about the fact that they could go in sort of undetected and seem to be very familiar, Ashleigh, with all those cameras you talked about last night. All of that adds up to somebody familiar with them and the property.
Well, Jen, I hope that they're doing a lot more behind the scenes than it appears out here, because it's been crickets from this police department in Columbus. Come back on the show. Thank you for this. I appreciate it, Jen.
Thank you, Ashleigh.
So I mentioned the Tepe's children. One is just a baby, a year old, but the other one is 4. And I know that is so incredibly young, right? But 4 is old enough to remember things and maybe even answer a couple of questions and provide some clues. Police say that both kids woke up crying, but an uncle says he doesn't think that these kids saw their parents being murdered nor saw the aftermath. Still, there is a lot of information, a lot of clues that 4-year-old might be able to provide if the police are able to interview the child. But how do you do it? How do investigators go about interviewing a 4-year-old? Because interviewing a kid that young is not as easy as you might think. I covered a case back in 2007 involving a little 7-year-old witness named A.J. Hutto. And A.J. took the stand in the murder trial of his own mommy. And he told the court that his mom had drowned his sister as a punishment. I want you to see how the back and forth went, because I felt that it was very uncomfortable, but you will definitely hear what this little boy has to say about what he says he witnessed.
Who is this, or what is this?
My mama.
Okay. And what does she do?
killing my sister.
How is she doing that, AJ?
Putting her hand over her face.
Would you show me how she put her hand over your sister's face? Huh?
No, sir.
You don't want to do that?
No, sir.
No, sir. No, sir. I won't show you what it looked like when my mommy murdered my sister. I mean, talk about trauma on this little kid. And I had my own feelings about AJ's testimony. He was 6 when the murder happened, 7 when he testified. He was a very articulate little boy and so polite. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir. But he also was very suggestible, you know, as a 6 and 7-year-old would be. Any child that age is suggestible. And the chain of custody of AJ wasn't pristine. He was with family members. There were interviews that went on. It wasn't, say, the best forensic extraction of information from a little boy. And they went with it. They went with everything he said. And some of the things he said didn't line up with like the actual evidence around the house, right? Like a tree. He said he was in the tree watching, and you go in that tree, you can't see the pool. So there were a lot of inconsistencies. But nevertheless, AJ's testimony did help to send his mom, Amanda Lewis, to prison for life with no parole. Incidentally, AJ Hutto, that little sweetheart, would be about 25 years old now. He is married and he's a firefighter. And big thanks to Court TV, too, for that clip. Getting accurate forensic information from a young child is an extremely specialized skill, and one that many police officers often will cede to experts who know more about the science than they do. I'm going to get into an interview with an expert who knows how they're probably going to do that with this 4-year-old child if they get to speak to that child. But first, a big thank you for being a part of my true crime community, and a big thank you to my sponsors like Just Thrive. Let's talk about something very important: your health and your well-being. It is no secret, if your gut is off, everything is off. Your digestion, your energy, your mood, even your focus. It all starts in your gut, believe it or not. And when your gut struggles, your whole body feels it, which is why I trust Just Thrive Probiotic. Just Thrive turns your gut into an antioxidant factory, which means better digestion, healthy immunity, more energy, and even weight management. Just Thrive Probiotic comes in capsules or berry-flavored gummies. Yum. So there's an option for everybody in the family. And yes, I like the gummies because it's like a little treat that's good for you. So here is my challenge to you. Try Just Thrive Probiotic for 90 days. It's risk-free. Visit justthrivehealth.com/Banfield, and I've got 20% off for you. You're welcome. Just use my promo code and see the difference for yourself, or you'll get a full product refund, no questions asked. Take the 90-day Just Thrive Probiotic Challenge today at justthrivehealth.com/Banfield and be the best you with Just Thrive. Okay, back to the case. Earlier on my News Nation show, Banfield, I talked to Dr. Rebecca Bailey. She's a leading family psychologist and former personal therapist for J.C. Dugard. And you'll remember, J.C. was abducted by a convicted sex offender while walking to the bus stop when she was 11. She remained missing for more than 18 years, bearing 2 children by her rapist. So Dr. Bailey has a lot of information when it comes to childhood trauma. And then, of course, JC had these 2 kids. So she knows a heck of a lot about trying to do forensic work when it comes to kids. Here's our conversation. Dr. Bailey, thank you so much for being here. Just walk me through what happens now, if you could, with these little tiny witnesses. I'm just going to assume the 1-year-old is out of the picture, but that the 4-year-old could be questioned. What actually happens?
Well, what's important that when they are questioned, and particularly you're right, the 4-year-old is with somebody who's really well trained in forensics. There are protocols that are used throughout the country that is responsible training, which include being very careful about not re-traumatizing the child, which, as we've watched with that one, my heart just went into my feet. Bless that kid's heart. You want to be very careful about not suggesting things, about not doing leading questions, taking a kid into repeated interviews. We're very careful about that. Also titrating at times, the experience, the environment where you do the interview is super, super important. You don't want it done in the police station. 4-year-olds, like any other age, also can be very variable in their ability to recall accurately. And then the last thing is if it is somebody known to the child, you can see a tremendous loyalty bind at times. It's just so heartbreaking, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you something, that AJ Hutto, you didn't even see the most traumatizing moment on the stand when they asked him to identify his mom, and he looked around the courtroom and didn't, and then suddenly recognized there she was. She'd been away from him, locked up for years, and he just burst into tears. It broke my heart. I covered it live. But I do want to ask you about the suggestibility, because one of the things in AJ's case that was questioned by Amanda's defense lawyer was that this child had been put in the back of a car with other family members who hated Amanda and said all sorts of things about Amanda, and that might be the memory of little AJ. How does an expert know when you're getting the real witnessed event or just what was suggested to them?
Well, it's challenging. We absolutely know it's challenging. The basic when a child is being interviewed in the formal manner, you want to make sure that they are able to give child-centered language, meaning that they're using words that sound like a child would use, they're concrete, they're able to stay with the same story without a whole lot of fantastical elaboration to what they're saying. So that's really one of the ways to do a veracity check. It's again challenging. But you're looking.
Yeah, I
for
would imagine
language.
that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I would imagine that the parents or the adults who are trying to meddle with a child wouldn't think to use 4-year-old lingo. They would just talk in their own mannerisms, and that would be absorbed and then regurgitated by the child, right?
Absolutely. And a lot of my work, as you know, has been in the treatment side of it. And even in that side, you have to be really careful with suggestibility, because you can change the course of a person's perspective in treatment as well. And sometimes when I know, particularly in a very, don't want to get into a tough area, but high conflict divorce, if the language doesn't fit, you know that you're not seeing a authentic expression of what occurred. I will also tell you, I have worked on one very tragic case where the mother was murdered, and they haven't actually pinned the murder to the person they believe, but because it was a family member, alleged family member. And these children, the loyalty bind is so deep. You can see it, that they just can't spill the tea. They just can't. And it's not because they're bad kids are hiding. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And sometimes they start saying things and then start to realize what they're saying is damaging to their loved one, and then they like AJ just said, no sir, I'm not going to show you what I just said. So it really, I could see your reaction, and I had the same one. Let me tell you, it was so hard sitting through that trial. Dr. Rebecca Bailey, I'm going to call on you again, because I think there's more to this story, and I think those kids will play a part. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Nice to see you again. Take care.
Okay, now let's shift back to the scene itself, the Tepe's house. They lived on North 4th Street, but their garage is a detached garage, and it faces the alley on the other side, facing west. So here's the path on Google Maps from 4th Street down 8th Avenue, which is the corner that they kind of live on. They're just 2 doors down. And it takes you into the alley where somebody was on the move in the pre-dawn hours of December 30th. Here's a couple of photos from the other side of the Tepe's garage and their backyard. We've got a view that points towards the back of their house, which, as you can see, is surrounded by a wooden fence. You can also see a view pointing from the house to the garage. And we can assume if the killer accessed the house from the alley, it likely would have been through this garage. We can also assume that if police haven't been able to find any solid video from all of the neighbors who live on North 4th Street, it is likely that the killer came through this alley. Now, here's what looks like a basement window in the back of the house. It is possible that the killer got in through this window. This is the downstairs bedroom on the other side of that window. But remember, police said that the Tepes were found dead on the 2nd floor of the home, so not in this bedroom, which makes this so much more curious. Again, how'd that 911 caller see Spencer's body beside his bed if they were killed on the 2nd floor? It's pretty hard to scale the front of that house and peek inside the 2nd-story window. Not impossible, but hard. And hard to hold your phone and be on 911 at the same time. So for what it's worth, the Tepe house does appear to have a Ring doorbell cam in the front. And their next-door neighbor appears to have loads and loads of cameras all around their house. You can see one on the left side of the front of the house. There's 2 more above a window on the south side of the house. You can see 2 more cameras on their garage facing west into the back alley. And I question for a little bit, are those lights or are those cameras? And I've asked a lot of people who think they're cameras. I could be corrected. They could be spotlights. But why would you want the spotlights, I don't know, on the side of the house and into the alley? Who knows? But we can only assume that if they're cameras, they could hold a ton of information if the cameras were working and if that material was provided to the police. And local media says there's also a police camera on a utility pole just 150 feet away from the house, and you can see it here plain as day, all sorts of angles from that corner. But if the killer was somebody the victims knew, would he slip in like a cat burglar? From the back, from the side, out of the view of these cameras? And what if the killer was a complete stranger? We do not like to think about it, but homicidal strangers can and do invade homes at random, like Brian Kohberger. And there's another famous person that we can always think back to as well in a famous case, Amanda Knox. Because a homicidal stranger did come into her home in Italy and did stab her roommate Meredith Kircher to death. The DNA proved that it was Rudy Guidi, and while in another case this person wasn't killed, a stranger, mostly a stranger, came into Elizabeth Smart's home and kidnapped her out of her bed, held her for 9 months, and raped her for those 9 months. That guy was like a random homeless guy that the Smarts thought they'd be nice to and gave him a little handyman work. But effectively, he was kind of a stranger. So sometimes it's somebody you know, and sometimes it is just truly the boogeyman. We're going to be watching the story really closely, so make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss a single update. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and remember, the truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.